Hello. Hello, everyone. I'm just going to wait for everyone to drip through. Just going to wait for everyone to come through. If you can hear me, just please just let me know in the comments. And hopefully you can all see me as well, because I was a bit worried about lighting. So I'm just going to wait for a few more people to, just a few more minutes, 2 minutes for people to drop through, and then we will get started. Okay, I'll just give it 1 more minute for people to come through before we roll, before we get down to business. Okay. Okay, all right. Okay, well, I think I'm going to start now. So thank you everyone for joining CUFA's behind the scenes film series, where we speak to some of the industry's biggest and brightest writers, directors, cinematographers, and producers, and editors as well. Today we have a very, very, very special guest. We have a man who has graduated from the National Film and Television School. He's in that 2 years since his graduation, he's worked on 2 feature films and a plethora of short films on some of like UK's most gripping dramas. And we are extremely excited to welcome him to Behind the Scenes Film Series with the Cambridge Film Association. Just a little bit about his work on the feature film called Blue Story, which was a UK box office smash hit, despite everything that I went through. But yeah, we are extremely happy to have him on our show. Just a little bit about what he does. I think it's better for me to show you than to tell you. So here's a little snippet from his work on Blue Story.
Welcome to London. I love this guy, you know. Welcome to London.
Remember, you know, we got each other's backs. I got yours, you got mine.
Welcome to London.
Hey, where you from?
What happened? Who done this to you?
Your boy's done it.
My boys. What are you talking about? You know I'm not part of them. We always have each other's back.
All I know is, if you're from ghetto, you're one of them.
Marco, why are you letting your brother brainwash you? Stop being stupid.
What are you gonna do, huh?
What are you trying to prove?
I'm coming for you. And I swear on my life, I ain't gonna stop until you're dead.
Burying their sons, man, that ain't right. And I ain't trying to justify, but I'ma show you what these young boys are fighting for.
Woo! Okay. Yo, okay, now I've got the chills. I've got chills. So that was the trailer for Blue Story, and if you want to catch it, you can find it on Amazon Prime, and you can also find it on YouTube, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, Mdhamiri and Nkemi edited that, and it was an amazing film, and I think it was basically such a culturally significant movie, and I'm delighted to be able to introduce him to the stream. So welcome, Mdhamiri.
Hey,
Hey, how you doing?
jazz hands.
You okay? How you doing?
Yeah, good. How are you?
I'm well. We are extremely excited and happy to be able to welcome you to CUFA's behind the scenes film series. And yeah, we're stoked to have you on board. You have worked on some of the UK's most gripping short films and feature films, from Masterpiece, Dear Mr. Shakespeare, and Blue Story, and even The Last Tree. And I think you've done all of that in the last 2 years, ever since graduating from the National Film and Television School. Like, how?
Very busy last few years.
It's been a mad 2 years. I think that's like unprecedented, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. You've been busy, so that's good. So yeah, we just kind of wanted to catch up with you on the kind of much neglected role of an editor in the kind of filmmaking process. Everyone thinks of the cinematographer, the director, even the producers, but the editor is really the one with the power, and a lot of the an editor can cut up a film in many different ways, and so I think it's a great medium in which to kind of delve deeper into. And I would say, especially so in the modern era where we have people who edit, I think people have a greater grasp of editing. If you're editing pictures, editing short clips, it could be on Snapchat, TikTok. I think there's a wider proliferation of editing in modern day life. And in my personal opinion, I think editors are the modern day artists and poets. Honestly, because I think the power of editing is so powerful, and we know it is, but we kind of neglect it, so to speak, in the creative process to a large degree. But yeah, so you graduated from the National Film and Television School, and I would love you to very briefly tell us what that experience was like, being at the best film in the UK. So.
I mean, firstly, it was amazing. It was so such a great experience, and I guess like I'd gone because before that I was working in commercials as an assistant editor, and really wanted to kind of, cause I'd done some shorts before that, but I kind of felt like I was getting stuck in the advertising world, and I really wanted to move back into film, which was what my heart was, and do long form stuff. And so I applied, even though basically, so this was just after I did my sort of undergrad, and so I was 20, and the average age for NFTS was, I think, like 26 or something. And so I knew it was a bit ridiculous me applying then, but I was like, okay, well, we'll just see what happens, because at least they'll get to know my face, and then later on when I apply, it should be a bit easier. Yeah. And I did have like quite a big sort of CV full of like shorts and stuff, so I thought that would help my process. And yeah, super luckily managed to like blag my way onto the course, which was amazing. And like, it was really great because it felt like there were all these people who were like way more experienced than I was, that I could learn from and get to collaborate with. And I worked on a lot of short films while I was there, and just build a lot of like connections. It was pretty really useful after graduating, because I think I spent the first year pretty much only working with people either I'd met on the course or previous graduates from NFTS. So it was like a big like network it sort of threw me into.
No, that's amazing. I doubt you could have blagged your way onto the course. That's Mary being very, very humble. But if I'm not mistaken, I think National Film School admit students every 2 years, and I think it's like 30 people on a course.
So it's every year, but it's 8 students per course.
8 students per course. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So that's highly, highly, highly competitive and selective. So congrats to you. We salute you. But
it was a terrifying process applying.
You mentioned that you had kind of studied editing before in your undergrad, but I just wanted to know, I want to track before then and know when you decided that you wanted to spend your life editing and becoming an editor? Because it's, most people would want to be, I don't know, a cinematographer, but it's a very particular medium in which to kind of show your craft. So why editing? Why
editing? It's a good question. I guess like when like from a really early age, basically my family had a lot of books in the house. My mother was a big fan of getting her children to read, and so we read loads when I was growing up. And I actually, from a quite early age, thought I was going to be an author. So I really enjoyed like storytelling and like reading stories and telling stories, and so that was super exciting for me. And then I think when I was like 12, I discovered like this program called iMovie, which was on like every Mac back then, and it was like the first editing software that I encountered, and was just like obsessed with it. Like I basically was at my aunt's house. She had a Mac, and I think I went there for like a party, but I spent the entire time just in her back room on this Mac, like playing with iMovie, and like convinced my mother to get a camera, like a really cheap like sort of Sony Handycam, and started making films. So I was doing everything basically back then. I was like coming up with stories and sort of trying to force my family into being in them, and made like loads of like really terrible short films. And then went to college and did a media course and started working in teams for the first time. And I think that was when I started realizing the editing bit was a bit that I was good at. I could see myself doing sort of more long term, and I started sort of being the person who edited everyone else's films. Okay. And then from there, when I was then applying for my undergrad, when I was trying to work out what course to do, it felt like editing was the way to go. Okay. And sort of stuck with it from then on, I guess.
No, I mean, I think I saw a short that you edited about 8 years ago called String Theory.
Oh God!
And even then, you could tell even then that he was going to be a success. So, but kind of looking at your portfolio to the up to date, you've predominantly worked on fiction. Has this been a conscious decision?
I think I've actually kind of like really tried at least to work on a lot of different kinds of stuff, because I actually really enjoy the different challenges that you get from doing between like documentary and doing fiction. And also actually at NFTS I was introduced to animation, so I got to do that, and I would really love to do more of that kind of stuff. I guess there just happens to be more fiction stuff made, I think, and that's the sort of network that I'm in. And also it's very easy, like in any role, but especially editing, I think it's easy to get pigeonholed in a certain type of stuff. So doing a fiction film, like doing The Last Tree, meant that I basically literally the producer of Blue Story saw The Last Tree and was like, oh, maybe this guy would be a good editor for it. But then meant after doing Blue Story, I was offered a bunch of films that were very similar to Blue Story. And it's quite boring. After you've done one, you're like, okay, cool, I've done that. I've like learned so much from doing that. Now I want to do something totally different. So it's quite easy to get pigeonholed in that way. So I've actually tried to keep switching up, I guess, with each project. So I'm on a documentary at the moment, and fingers crossed I'm on an animation next year, a feature animation next year.
Okay. You're busy. You're okay. So you're very, very busy, very booked. You're booked out. But you mentioned that you're working on different things and you don't want to get pigeonholed. I mean, would you say that you have a particular style of editing, a particular aesthetic, and if so, what does that look and feel like?
Mm-hmm. I got this a bit. Like, I feel like editors shouldn't have their own styles. I feel like that style should be dictated by the film and the style of the film, because I feel like the job of an editor primarily is to translate what's in the director's vision and translate that into something the audience will then understand and relate to. And so for me, I feel like it's really important to not try and put myself on it, but then also at the same time I am a human with like my own tastes. So that is going to come through like anyway. You can't stop that happening completely. But I think in terms of style, I feel like that should be dictated by the film. So I hope that Blue Story feels very different from the style of The Last Tree, because they were made by very different directors with different sensibilities and they were trying to do different things.
No, yeah, they are very, very different films. But yeah, no, on the topic of being versatile, would you say that you have a preference for particular software? I know people in the industry, they kind of obsess over like what software to use. I think
Yes.
Premiere Pro is seen as like the industry standard, but then you have Avid and then you have Final Cut. So kind of where would your preference lie in terms of editing software?
It's funny. This is one of like the really nerdy editing questions. Like I'm part of like several editing groups on Facebook, and the number one like argument that keeps happening is someone goes, "Hey, what about this editing software?" And then you get like a bunch of editors piling in, going, "No, it's all about this one. It's all about this one." It's weird. I don't think I've ever cared that hugely. I think. I mean, primarily, I think I switch between Avid and Premiere. Those are different ones I'm using. Avid is the kind of industry for long form. It's been the kind of industry standard for forever, since it moved from editing literally on film on Steambox. But then Avid, sometimes a bit clunky, and I find like for short form stuff, it's easy to use Premiere, and it's more sort of versatile and allows you to kind of interact with its different like Adobe programs and stuff. But I mean, to be honest, I kind of am happy using whatever.
Okay, so very versatile, very, very versatile. And thank you. I just want to say thank you for the people who are commenting in the chat. If we do have time at the end, I will definitely put your questions to Mdhamiri. So
Yo back can answer that one right now.
Oh, okay. Well, we can answer that right now, actually. So what is the biggest difference between editing doc and fiction?
Oh, I think in a lot of ways, actually, what I've learned is that it's quite similar in terms of crafting story. You are at the end of the day trying to tell a story, and you're trying to find that arc and have that character development and so on, and build that structure. I think with documentary, usually it depends as well on the type of documentary, but documentary usually that structure isn't there. And you kind of have to work it out. The director will have something in mind, hopefully, but it was kind of in the edit where you're working out what that journey is. And so you have to kind of understand story a lot more, I think, and understand how to sort of weave that together in a way that out of rushes that might not have that sort of inherently in them. You've got to work out what that kind of journey is. I think that's been the biggest thing for me.
So what was just leading on from that, what was the kind of collaboration process with Ratman and Simon Scotland, who was the cinematographer, and Ratman was the director of Blue Story? Like, you maintain communication in the cutting room that kind of led to you realizing this collective vision for Blue Story?
Yeah, well, the thing with Blue Story is it was quite unique because, so the Raps and Simon had established a relationship long before I was involved, because they'd made this short web series called Shiro Story, and so they had this like super great connection and collaboration. And Shiro Story was made on a much smaller budget, and there was no big sort of team. It was just him and Raps and Simon, and Simon was also the editor, and so. And also because it was such a big step for Raps to going from that to then doing a feature, I think everyone was kind of pretty sure from early on that they wanted a really sort of close collaborative approach with me, so I could help sort of advise and give support. So I was brought on from before, while they were still in the pre-production stage, and sort of met Raps and gave some notes on the script. And then I was actually on the set the whole time during the shoot, either in the production office or actually literally on set standing next to him, looking at the camera. So I was able to feedback quite quickly in terms of like what was working, what I felt were missing. Both to Raps and to Simon. So because obviously for Simon as well, it was a massive leap up. So I guess it was a super collaborative process. I'm trying to think of examples now. There were sort of times. Oh, there was a whole decision during the shoot to shoot with multi-camera, so shooting two cameras at the same time. Simon hadn't done that before. we kind of needed to work out together as a group, like what that second camera should be picking up, what sort of scenes is it useful for. So we used it for sort of big crowd scenes like the party, for instance, or the action scenes. We all shot that with 2 cameras. So it's kind of working out what that second camera is going to be picking up, what would be most useful for the edit. And I was able to then go back and sort of cut together assemblies quite quickly of each scene and then feed that back to them.
No, I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of differences between working on a really big project like Blue Story and definitely like Shiro Story. But I think like watching Shiro Story, they squeezed everything out of that. That was
the film looks like way more expensive than it actually was. Like they know how to, and I think the same with Blue Story actually. I feel Blue Story does look more expensive than the budget and what they were able to get because they were so used to that sort of sense of like hustling and like pulling everything.
Oh, I know. I think I was on a live with one of the producers, and I think the budget was £1 million.
Yeah.
So I mean, shout out to everyone who was on that project. That was amazing, man. Respect. But just kind of on the in terms of scale and working on such a huge budget film, what are the main challenges that you faced, and also the main advantages apart from remuneration? So apart from that,
I mean, the thing is though, like 1.2 definitely sounds like a lot of money, and it is in most situations. But for a big film, that's actually really low budget. And Paramount, who were the studio, behind it. So it was Paramount Pictures, which is the UK side, and at Paramount Pictures, John, who's like a really great like supporter of the film, he had to convince Paramount for them to fund it, because for Paramount, it's like the smallest film they've ever done. They're like, why are we bothering making a film for 1.2 million when all of our films are like 10 million plus? So he had to fight for it. He had to like show how much he cared and that he thought it was going to be a really good film. And so and I think the idea that Raptors had was always super ambitious, and so actually meant trying to get a lot out of which ended up being not that much in terms of extras and locations. So the film goes through so many different locations and extras, and there's so many people in the film, which isn't the norm for a 1.2 million film. So I guess the challenges were actually sort of how to get the most out of it in the out of the budget, and then also because the budget wasn't huge, it meant that the shoot we only had like a 24 somewhere around 24-day shoot. Then we had to get all of that stuff. We had to work all of that stuff into the schedule, and making sure. And so there was no time to go back and reshoot anything. No time to go get pickups. So every time you moved on from a location, that was it. That was going to be everything you got from there. So we had a scene, for example, there's a scene on the bus. I think halfway through the film, I think, or something like that. Where you get 2 characters on a bus, and then you get a bunch of guys running along on side, and they all get on the bus, and it's like the reveal of the new Timmy. And they shot that scene at the end of like a really long day, and the sun was setting, and the scene's supposed to be all set during day, but the sun set during the middle of the shoot of that scene. And so they gave me the rushes, and half of it was daytime and half of it was nighttime. And I said, what am I going to do with it? But that was it. We just had to work out how to make it work. So if you like go back and watch that scene, you'll notice there'll be, from certain angles, you'll only get close-ups because we can't show the outside of the bus because it's actually night.
Wow. Okay, that's a bit mad. Did you actually spend time? So you spent time on set?
Yeah. So I was on set for a bunch of times during the film. Yeah.
Really good. I guess we always have this image of editors like in this dark room, and it's a very solitary occupation. So it's good to know that there was a lot more kind of room for collaboration involved. But yeah, focusing on editing and the power of editing. I think the power of editing kind of shows itself when the fact that you can create multiple versions of a film during post-production, and I think that's basically amazing. But was there a scene in Blue Story that could have been conveyed in such a different way than it was done on screen through editing? And what was the decision-making process in that?
Yeah, I think I mean, yeah, definitely all films like go through that sort of process of development and sort of rediscovery throughout the editing process. We started off with I think it was like 2 hour, maybe 2.5 hour assembly. And then it was funny actually because Raps, because he's written the script obviously and was like so in love with all the characters. I remember him like loving that 2 hour assembly. He was like, "This is great. We're done. We're gonna like we can finish." I think the edit was like 12 weeks, and this was like week 2. I think it was like we're good. This is what we're gonna show. Because obviously it was his first time doing a feature. And before I'm more used to like having that process and then like going, okay, now we're going to like hone it down and sort of make the best version of it. So it went on quite a big journey, I think, from that 2 hours. I mean, some scenes actually stayed very similar, but there were definitely whole like sections that we were trying to work out how do we sort of get the best out of it? How do we keep it entertaining, keep it moving? Especially like so I guess the stuff that changed the most was the opening. So the initial version of it in the script is that you follow these characters. You follow Timmy basically going to this new school and meeting Marco and making these friends when he's really young, when he's like I think it's 11 or something. And I think the first 15 minutes of the film is just that, and it's kind of just like character building basically. And then 15 minutes in, you get the scene where they're playing football and they're older, and you get like the title blue story. And that stuff at the beginning was fun. It was like kind of nice to watch, but the story, it was quite obvious when you watched it, the story doesn't actually start happening until they're older. So that first 15 minutes of the film was kind of just wasting time. And so we spent some time trying to work out how to fix that, and we tried loads of different versions, like kept doing different shorter and shorter scenes, till eventually we realized that I think we've had this like sort of eureka moment where I kind of realized that Raps had this whole thing going on where he has this technique where he'll, if you guys have not seen his work, like basically he'll rap certain scenes, he'll rap over certain scenes, kind of sort of narrate them through rap, and there'll be a kind of sort of explanation of what's happening or what's about to happen or what has happened. And it'll kind of be very sort of Shakespearean sort of one-man Greek chorus. And so there wasn't a plan for that in the beginning, in that opening section, but we kind of realized that we could use that as a way of shortening it all down to just be a montage that explained, who the characters are. We can get across those sort of main sort of plot points that are important to know for the story to go forward. But we didn't have to spend 15 minutes on it. We could spend 5 minutes on it. So that's why the opening of the film is like that, because that's us recrafting a kind of a new way into the story.
No, I think that's a much more effective way of doing it, and it's quicker. Kind of hurry the story along. But I love the fact that how Raps Blue Story is like a melodrama, so like I love how he incorporates the Raps in the storytelling like pathway. So like you actually preempted a little bit of my next question. Like, so how do you as an editor make sure that you are kind of following his train of thought with the Raps and like editing to the beat?
Yeah, I mean it was interesting. It was like definitely a sort of back and forth process, especially the Raps that he hadn't. Some of them, I think there were 3 that he'd written before the shoot, and those are the ones that he raps, like he walks on screen and raps. But then there were I think a few more that we added during the editing process, and it was kind of a process of trying to work out the best way of doing it, because I'd not done it before, but obviously he was super comfortable with it because he'd done it loads and he'd done it with Shiro Story, so he kind of knew how that works. So I definitely remember going back and rewatching Shiro Story and going, okay, this is how they use montage during the raps, and this is kind of his style, and then seeing how we could like take it one step forward and do something new with it. So there was like that, the opening. There were a couple of other scenes as well where either that we moved stuff around in the edit, and we realized that the only way to make it work is that we'd need to have him kind of explain the sort of confusion, or we'd have later on in the film we also do sort of shorten scenes into montages and then have him explain what was happening, just enough so you get you can still follow the story. And so when it was my suggestions, I'd sort of cut it. He'd give me the instrumental, and I'd cut to that, kind of a rough idea of what shots I think we'd need, and then he'd come in and watch that, and I'd discuss, okay, I think this is a piece of information that is important for this scene. I'm trying to think of an example. So, like, there's a montage maybe a third of the way through where we see both Timmy and Marco go on dates, and they're very different. They're very different dates, so the lead up to that was something that was turned into a montage, and we kind of did that and then discussed. Okay, we need to know that Marco's going, that Timmy's going on a date with Leah. What that means for him, the fact that it's his like first time and he's really like nervous. We need to know that Marco's going on a date and that it's like the polar opposite, and he's really confident, and stuff like that. And the fact that they were happening at the same time. So we discussed that, and then Raps would go away and kind of work out how to do that through rhyme, which I'm like amazed by that he could interpret those ideas and then turn it into something that was actually like enjoyable to listen to. And then he'd come back, he'd go record that, and then bring it back, and then we'd try it in. And then sometimes it would be amazing, it would work perfectly. Sometimes you go, oh, okay, actually, you've explained a bit too much. Let's take out these last 4 lines here. And because I had the instrumental, I could then like sort of kind of do a bit of music editing and go, okay, well, we'll just use this bit and this bit. And then that would be it. And then and obviously after the edit, they'd go away and record it properly. That was kind of the process.
Wow. Okay. I mean, so is there a massive difference between the way you would edit a music video, because you have worked on music videos, and the way you would work on like a short film, like a just a normal fiction film? Is there a massive difference in the approach?
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like there's also a difference when you cut, like with Blue Story, when you cut scenes that have music in films that are kind of montagey. There's a kind of different focus than when you're cutting a music video, because music video is about, well, the performance-based ones are about entertainment. They're about like making the artist look good and making everyone's nodding to the beat. Whereas with films, it's primarily about character and making sure you're understanding the character motivations and what it is they're going through and what that emotional journey is. And yeah, definitely that's something we're looking at in Blue Story, and I know I've done in like my shorts that I've done as well. Like I did a short called The Devil's Harmony, which was about it's basically this crazy idea about an a cappella group that in a high school that discover they have this like ability, if they sing at a certain key, they can sing people to sleep.
Okay.
Into like a coma. And they go around like wreaking havoc on the rest of the school. And so there's like a lot of music in the film, but like a lot of discussions I had with the director was like how to make sure that those scenes felt like they were driving the emotional story forward and not just like, they weren't just cool montage scenes.
Okay, no. Well, we will be linking a copy of all of like Mdhamiri's work like at the end of the stream, so you'll have a chance to get a chance to look at his stuff. Have another question from the audience. How do you stay focused through the editing process on longer form pieces?
That's a very good question, and something I haven't entirely worked out yet. It's really tricky because, well, I think there's like 2 problems. There's like the first stage of the editing process where you're like just watching rushes, and that can get very tedious, especially if you're watching like the same thing over and over again and you're trying to work out, I've watched this 10 different versions of this, which one is the best one? It's really hard, and you spend all day doing it. And in fact, the project I'm on at the moment, I can say because it's been announced now, is this documentary where I think we've definitely hit some sort of record, because we have 12,000 hours, I think, of rushes, which is insane. It's basically, let's give a bit of context, it's basically like, it's this project through RSA, which is Ridley Scott's company, and it's commissioned by YouTube. And basically, it's called Life in a Day, and what they do is they invite everyone in the world to send in material that they shoot on this one day, and then it gets compiled into this 90-minute film. And they did it the first one was 10 years ago, in 2010, and then now this is the sequel that they're making this year. So this is what I'm doing right now. And it's it's really difficult because you've got so much material and so much, and obviously you're only going to put the top 0.1% into the film, and a bit of sort of a marathon of going through it, and you kind of have to sort of. I guess I can only talk about the techniques that I've like worked out. One of them is like making notes when I'm first watching it and just writing down my initial reactions, because when you go over that same thing again and again and again, you stop getting that emotional response to it, and stuff that was funny the first time is not funny the 20th time. So there's that, and I guess I'm trying to think what else. Taking lots of walks, trying to like refresh your brain, coming back to something in the morning after you've worked on it all night is refreshing, because suddenly you can see it through a different light. And something actually that I think a lot of editors find quite useful are test screenings and just showing stuff to a fresh audience. Like one, their response is going to be useful because of they're watching it for the first time, but also just there's something kind of different about watching something in a room with someone else, that suddenly you see it in a different way. It's almost like psychological. You kind of experience it differently, and you go, oh, okay, well, I can see how all that stuff isn't actually working. But definitely showing stuff in test screenings are really, really useful.
I mean, have you ever had like kind of a major conflict with a director in regards to the selection of or deselection of some scenes? I mean, you don't have to name names, but it would be nice to know how that discussion takes place.
Yeah, no, I mean, it happens all the time, because as like the normal process is that the first step will be the editors like putting together the assembly, and that will be away from the director, and I'll be picking based on what I think is the best. I'll have like normally, especially on bigger films, I'll have like a script supervisor will have given me notes on what the director thinks is the best stuff on the day. But it'll be kind of down to me whether I pick that or whether I pick something that I think is better. And then so that entire assembly will be made out of the stuff I think is good. And then like with the Blue Story, that'll be like a 2.5-hour film that I'm showing the director, and it will be entirely stuff that I think is all the takes that I think are good. And you kind of like, it's terrifying. I mean, it's terrifying for the director, obviously, because it's like the first cut of the film, but it's terrifying for the editor, because you go, what if they hate it? Like, what if they just like fire me straight away? But I think like kind of my rule of thumb is, as long as like 60% of it they like, then you're good. You're not going to get fired. And then you work through the rest, and then go through scene by scene with them, and they go, oh, okay, let's maybe look at other takes for this scene and see if there's anything better. I mean, usually it's actually a conversation. It's not that, oh no, let's definitely change this for something else. They're going, oh, maybe I think when we filmed it that there might have been a better performance of that, and then you go back and look, and then you find out either there is or there isn't, or it's I'm not sure about that performance, but I know we haven't got anything better. Let's try and work out another way of doing it that kind of hides that. So
how much freedom do you actually have of various projects that you've worked on? Is it a case of you kind of left to your own devices to a certain degree, or you have the director and possibly the cinematographer and the producers in the cutting room with you at varying stages of the editing process? I
mean, I always like to be left to my own at the beginning with every project, definitely just to have some time to sort of build up my own sort of relationship with the rushes. And then it kind of depends project by project based on like the director and their sensibilities. Like some directors will just like leave me alone and come in maybe every few days. And like with the last Prix, for example, Shola and I built up a really strong relationship now, and we've worked together on, I think, 3 or 4 projects, and so we kind of know. Sorry,
just for context, Shola Amor directed the last Prix and was also a student at the National Film and Television School. Shola and I met when I was like 16, I think, and worked on a lot of stuff together. And so we have this kind of shorthand where I kind of know what he wants already. He doesn't need to explain it, and then I'll cut that together, and then he'll come in and give notes, if he thinks it's not working, or if he thinks we can do something else with it. So he'll rarely be in the editing suite. With Wrapped, it was quite similar actually, except for maybe towards the end when we were starting to sort of get down into the nitty-gritty of each cut and finessing it, and then he'd come around quite a bit, especially with the sort of music stuff, because that's his thing. That's totally the world he knows.
Yeah, so it kind of depends on the project. I mean, it will usually be the director. So the normal process will be there'll be an editor's assembly, there'll be the director's cut, which just means the director, and then after that we'll widen it up to the producers for notes. And so, for example, Blue Story, we had, I think, 2 weeks for the assembly, and then I think it was another week or a couple of weeks for the director's cut. It wasn't very long. And then we started showing it. We had sort of screenings with BBC, who are execs, and then Paramount, who are execs. And so we'd show it to them, I think, sort of once every 2 weeks, I think, and they'd watch it and give us notes. Then we go away, and Raps and I would then work together again.
Okay.
But it's usually not the cinematographer, just so you know.
We have a question from CUFA's president, actually, Rowan. Right. Yes, this is the boss man. When editing things like Life in a Day and documentary, how do you go about finding and structuring a narrative?
It's a good question. I think, it depends on the documentary. For Life in a Day, I think it's quite unusual in that there is no preconceived idea for the structure. Like, it's not okay, we're going to follow, this character's going on this particular journey. It's kind of everyone sends in their material, and we kind of work out from that what the story is. So it's quite a big challenge in the editing room. But we haven't worked out the structure yet. We start probably next week. But the plan is to kind of watch all the material, watch as much as we can, and then kind of let that kind of speak to us about what the story could be, what are the themes that are coming through. But yeah, usually with documentary, you get a kind of there is some sort of idea at the beginning, and then you're kind of trying to work out what's the best way of executing that. Is it to have the characters' life play out chronologically, or is it sort of moving stuff back and forth? And I think with a lot of documentary editors that I know, will pin up loads of basically post-it notes on a wall and write down the different possible scenes, and then kind of work out from there what is the best structure, because you're trying to build up a sense of a narrative that goes on an emotional journey or an emotional arc. So the character starts off here, and then they learn this, and then maybe they now you introduce the conflicts, and you get build up of all the conflicts, and then you have some sort of resolution. So it will be some form of that.
Okay. We have another question, and this is actually from Zebulon, who is on the CUFA's committee, and he's both the most prolific editor on the committee, actually. He is the designated editor. And his question is, what's your role in Life in a Day? I heard it's a huge editing team.
Yes, it is. It's a massive editing team, and it's getting bigger. I think that so we've got this reviewer team who are currently 45 people, I think. And I spoke to the head of the reviewing team today, and she's interviewing, I think, 20 people today that they're going to hire, because we're sort of ramping up the scale of it. And so their job is they're kind of sort of frontline, watching the material. They're the poor people who are going to have to watch all the full 12,000 hours, and they're watching the material, and we've got the sort of rating system, which I think they use on the first Life in a Day as well, which is really, really useful, where they'll rate stuff 1 to 5, and 1 will be, no one ever should watch this again, and 5 will be, this is the best thing I've seen, this definitely needs to go in the film. And so they'll be doing that. They're doing that now, and they'll continue to do that for the next month or so. And then there are 3 sort of main editors, so myself, NC, and Sam, and we're the core editing team, and so it's us who will be working out what the story is, and together with Kevin McDonald, the director, we'll be watching all the rushes and sort of working out what the story is from there.
Okay.
It's a pretty big team. It's the biggest team I've ever worked with.
I've never heard of anything quite like that. Wow, it's insane. We have another question from Rowan, who's asking, also, any examples of times you've been giving edits you disagree with? How have you dealt with that?
Luckily, I think I'm quite lucky that it hasn't happened that much. And I think I'm good enough at arguing my case that I can usually convince a director if I strongly feel that it shouldn't go in that direction. But I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like the editor's job is to help the director's vision get on screen, and so the director is the boss at the end of the day. And if you disagree, then I mean, it's their film. They're the ones who are going to get the glory if it works, but also going to get all the shit if it doesn't work. So I mean, it is fundamentally their call. But I mean, as I said, luckily it hasn't happened a huge amount. I think I'm trying to think of examples. I mean, what does happen, which is a bit more tricky, actually, that I've had, is when you have a lot of different voices. So I worked on this TV series. When was it? End of last year, and so we had the director and producer, but then we also had, it was basically an Agatha Christie adaptation called The Pale Horse, and we had the director and producer, and then also the BBC, because they were funding it, and then also Amazon, because they were funding it, and then also Agatha Christie's estate. They have like someone managing that and approving whether or not you can do certain things. So we had their notes as well. We had Mammoth, the production company, who, behind it. They were sending us notes as well. We had the writer, Sarah Phelps, who'd written the scripts, who was also sending us notes. So we had so many different opinions coming in. And so you get the sort of challenge of trying to work out how to make it all work, but also still fundamentally make a show that feels cohesive and feels like it's one train of thought. Even if you get notes that are contradictory, you still have to kind of work out how to appease everyone, I guess. And so that's when it becomes really tricky. I think that's one of the hardest parts of my job, is working out kind of how to weave all of that together in a way that is going to work. And the director is still, at the end of the day, going to be happy with.
Well, that sounds like a lot of pressure. You seem to be managing it really well. On the topic of the directors, I mean, is there anyone, let's say predominantly in the UK? Let's go to the UK. But is there any directors in the UK where you're like, yes, I would love to, work with that person. I love their films.
I think here in the UK,
I love that.
I feel like really excited at the moment, because there's actually a bunch of people that I'm working with now, or have worked in the last year, or hopefully will work with in the following year. That are the kind of people who I was really they were my idols when I was 16 and discovering filmmaking and watching loads of stuff. There's a director called Kibwe Tavares, who's amazing. And I remember watching his short, because I think it was when I was at college or when I started university, and going, this guy's amazing. I need to find a way to work with him. I think I emailed him. Actually, I've told him. I emailed him when I was at university, because he also had a production company. I emailed the production company being like, please, I don't know, I don't care what it is. Can I just come and be a runner in your company? Whatever you need me to do, I'll do it. I just need to work on these projects. These are so cool. No response at all. But the joke was on him, because I think after I graduated from NFTS, I got introduced to him again, and didn't mention any of this stuff. But then we did get to work together. So I was really happy about that.
No, that is poetic. I love that. I love that. The kind of stuff that you've worked on, The Last Tree, Blue Story, Dear Mr. Shakespeare, Masterpiece was amazing. They kind of all center on the Black experience, but from very different perspectives. How important has it been for you to be at the forefront of the depiction of Black UK narratives on screen?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I actually started out not thinking that much about it. And it just happened to be the people I was around, the people I was naturally drawn to, and the storytellers I was drawn to were people, like me, who were telling stories that I found exciting and that I was excited by. so it kind of started out like that, and I was just like getting to work with. I was in that, I guess, that sort of network of people, and they recommended me to their friends, and so that was the kind of stuff I was working on. But I guess like now I feel like I'm trying to more actively make sure that I am working on projects like that. And I think not solely, like I feel like I love doing loads of different types of stuff, and that's like part of why I love editing, is the ability to like do loads of different types of projects. But I feel it's really important, and I really enjoy, like totally selfishly, I really enjoy working on those kind of stuff. So if it's being made, I want to be a part of it.
I guess we have one question from the audience. Are you interested in directing at all?
Yes, I am actually. Because when I started out, as I said, I was like doing everything. And actually, while I was at film school, so I was kind of trying to follow in the footsteps of Shola, who, when he went to NFTS, he actually did the screenwriting course. But during the second year of the course, he directed a short film, and it played at the graduation ceremony. And he got an agent off the back of it, and he's now like a full-time writer-director. And I was like, oh, great, that's a really clever way of doing it. Because you also learn the craft of writing. So I was like, okay, I'll go through the editing course. I'll learn the craft of editing, but I'll also like at the same time, make a short film. This is very naive of me, because the editing course at NFTS is insanely busy and there's no time to do anything. But I still had all these ideas, and then after I graduated, actually one thing I did at the end of the course was there was this kind of, I think it's like a national competition among different universities, and it's called the Kodak commercials, I think, and you can apply to make a 30-second commercial on film that you shoot on film, and you get given a brand and you have to come up with a brief for it. And so I did that, and that was really, really fun. And then after I graduated, I still had this idea for a short I wanted to make, and applied for, there's a scheme that's been done alongside the BBC, basically with NFTS, where any student who's graduated can apply, and you get given a certain amount of budget to make a short film. And so I've like found a producer who was a friend of mine on the course, and we applied, and I managed to get it. So that's what I'm doing right now, actually, alongside the editing, is that I'm developing the short, which hopefully be like sort of my calling card as a director.
Okay, well, we can't wait to see it. And we love to see it. The other question I had, which I hope is not a silly question, you have directors like Edgar Wright, who have a very instantly recognizable filmmaking style.
Yeah.
How much is that achieved in the way his scenes are shot, and how much is in the edit? And I'm sure it's probably a combination of both, but which do you think it leans towards?
Yeah, I mean, I think with someone like Edgar, like I've looked into his work loads, actually, and into his process, and he's someone who I really admire, because he does something that I think really smart, in that he'll prep everything beforehand. He'll have an insane level of storyboards and animatics and stuff that he'll have worked out basically each beat of the film shot by shot for the most part, and then when he's shooting, he'll be shooting that, so he's worked out that style already, and his editor will be someone who's on set with him, cutting those shots into the animatics, so they'll know exactly how long each shot needs to be, and they'll have worked that out. I think he has this, like, I remember watching him seeing him talk once, and he has this joke that I think it was like Shaun of the Dead. I think this is like partly true and partly just him being really humble. But the whole sort of like snappy like start. Yeah. He was joking that with Shaun of the Dead, that basically the only reason that came about was because his execs kept telling him to make the film shorter, but he didn't want to cut any scenes, so he just made all the scenes faster, so it fit to a quicker runtime.
Oh man!
And I think probably that's partly true, but partly obviously he's a genius, and he knows that style so well.
No,
but it's also like someone else, like I don't know if you guys have seen the film Parasite, but it's another film that I love and I'm obsessed with, and I don't have it with me. It's at home, but I have. I bought the book of the storyboards because like
Yes.
I storyboarded every shot in that film.
I ordered it.
Yeah, and it's amazing. And like I've seen him talk as well, and the actors will talk about how kind of refreshing it is to work on a film where the director will know as you're saying the line exactly like to the second how long that line needs to be and where you need to be looking and like how your move is gonna cut into the next move. Like he'll have worked all of that out, and it's like a level of like obsessive detail that I'm like like amazed by.
No, I absolutely. That was Parasite was the last film I watched, and I went off and did like some research online, and I saw that he had a book which storyboarded everything. So I ordered it. Can't wait for it to come through.
It's amazing. I spent so long just looking through that book.
A masterpiece. Very interesting. I'm very mindful of time. However, I'm hoping I can squeeze in 2 questions or so. I wondered, like, how do you instantly know when a film's been badly edited?
It's tricky because I feel like with editing, it's kind of this hidden, like you said at the beginning, like it's kind of this hidden art, right? Where you can't really. I feel like you can't tell sometimes when you watch a film. Like there's the flashy editing. There's like the kind of whiplash, which I love, but I think the editing whiplash is like it's really snappy, it's really cutty. It's obvious when you watch that film that it's well edited. You can see that, like anyone can see that when you watch the film. But then there's those films that you don't notice the editing at all, but you're gripped as you're watching every moment of it. You're gripped, and all the beats are landing, and you're really drawn to the characters and to the story. And you walk out of it going, "That was an amazing film. Nothing about that was bad." And that film was amazing edited too. So I feel like you can sometimes tell when a film is badly edited when it's obvious. But I feel like also if you watch a film and you're not hooked and that something feels weird about the timing of it, and you kind of get a bit bored, in the middle of the film, that means it's been badly edited. Kind of any film can fall because of a bad edit.
No, 100%. That's why your job is so important. But just kind of dialing back, you mentioned that you had create short films, and you had done an undergrad degree in editing prior to arriving at the NFTS. But I guess with the kind of learning resources that we have available to us, like online, and just like in different sources, do you think it is necessary? And why, or if you do, why was it necessary for you to go to film school?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. Sorry?
Especially having done a degree.
Yeah. I feel like it's a really good question. I think, so I think it's really important to clarify that you don't have to go to film school to work in the industry. And so many people I know have gone through totally different paths. Everyone's like gone through their own path. There's an editor who was, when I applied for NFTS, got into like the final 16, and then he didn't make the final 8. But it was actually really interesting watching his journey that sort of paralleled to mine at the film school. And he went off to like a really amazing things. He worked on assistant editor on the last Lynn Ramsey film, and is now editing in his own right. Like he's doing really, really great, and he didn't go to film school. I think for me it was important not to learn the technical skills, because that stuff I think you can learn online and through experience of working on different projects. You can learn all that stuff sort of in the industry, as it were. I think for me specifically what I wanted, because I remember asking when I was at this assistant editing at this commercials place, I remember asking a few editors what they advised for how to get into films, into long form, and they were saying either you go, because I was in the commercials industry, which is a bit different from the film industry, and there is no kind of like close link. They were saying either you go away and start basically from the ground up and go be a runner again, and then work your way up to be an assistant, for like 6 years or whatever, and then go and then hopefully get given a break, or you go to a film school and like build up a network of people that you can then like collaborate with, and that, because I'm quite impatient, that was the route that I chose, because I just wanted to have that network, and I felt that would be that for me. That felt like the smartest way forward. And so that's what I got from NFTS. They did actually also teach me about editing, and I definitely became a better editor through going there. But primarily, I got to access to their huge network of alumni and all their graduates. And as I think I said, that year after I graduated, I pretty much only worked with graduates from NFTS.
Wow.
So that filled up my whole year.
No, I mean that's amazing. I think you've done a lot with what's been given to you. So well done. I mean, what would be your advice for editors starting out? Like, would you recommend like kind of courses or learning resources that maybe helped your development prior to attending film school?
I think like before film school, like the place I learned most from was actually just hands, like what's the expression? Working on short films is what I'm trying to say. I worked on a lot of short films, and that I learned so much from doing it. And I worked on a lot of really terrible films, which unfortunately some of them are still available online. But I from the process of doing them, I built up a huge amount of experience, and I learned, what to do, what not to do, the best way to tackle certain kinds of projects, and also not only the projects, I learned how to deal with different kinds of people, and I learned the whole sort of diplomatic and like personable side of like editing, and realizing how important that was in order to like get a director to trust you and let you have your own freedom and give your own contribution to the edit. And so that was what I learned most from. So I would say, work on as many projects as you can. Like even like at the beginning, don't be snobby. Like I feel like I'm at a position now where I can slightly start to be snobby, but at the beginning, definitely I was just saying yes to everything that came in, like regardless of what it was. So I built up a lot of experience that way. I think I also I would advise, like, if you can get a job, even if it's just like a year or something, or 6 months, or just like an internship at an editing post house, whether doing film or television or commercials. I think you learn a lot just like from that sort of hands on the. God, I keep forgetting. Is it hands on? Is it feet on the ground? I don't know.
Hands-on experience. Hands-on. Yeah,
I'm mixing two metaphors. That's what I'm doing. Hands-on experience.
Yeah.
I feel like that was really useful, because I learned so much just about working to deadlines and that kind of stuff, and having clients and dealing with that, and negotiating money and all that kind of stuff. And then I don't know what else was really useful. Finding mentors that could support me and give me advice, about people who like I reach out to for a coffee, like maybe like once or twice a year, and they'll give me advice on like how I'm doing and where they think what they're doing, and that'll be really, really helpful. I think like one person that I reached out to ages ago, actually got me my first agent, because she was talking to me over years and saw sort of my development and was like, "Oh, I'll just mention you to my agent, to her own agent," and then they reached out to me and signed me, which was amazing. But I think like the biggest thing that was useful to me was building up that group of collaborators. Like I said, I met Shola when I was 16, and a lot of my like career progression has been because of working on films with him. So the year before I went to NFTS, we worked on this really, really low budget feature together called A Moving Image, and doing that was like part of like I think why they accepted me onto the course. But it also meant that we built up this sort of collaboration. Then when he went on to do bigger projects, then he would take me on with him. And I think finding those people, especially directors who are kind of at the same level as you and you can grow up with together, I think is helpful. Yeah, exactly. Like for example, like with Raps, like now he's doing what I think it's like $30 million or something film.
Russell Crowe.
Yeah, with Russell Crowe, which is insane. Like I literally don't know how he made that jump, but like
so much. Like
yeah. No. So he's doing that now, and hopefully, like fingers crossed, he can convince the team to let me get on that, and then that will be a chance for me to sort of move up as well in my career.
Not too long.
Finding that sort of those collaborators, I think, is really important.
No. So not too long until the Academy Award. So.
I don't know about that.
No, I mean, I'm very conscious of time, and we want to thank you so much. I guess the final, if there are no more questions from the audience, I guess the final question would be kind of, what is your favorite film? Like, what really made you fall in love with film?
God, I didn't know really. Actually, really embarrassingly, I remember the first film I watched where I was like, oh, I mean, actually, you can make films, you can do that. That's a job. Was when I watched Cheaper by the Dozen 2, with Steve Martin, and I to be in fairness to myself, it's like it wasn't the film itself. The film's not good. I would not recommend it to anyone. But what was really enlightening to me was that the first commentary that I listened to, and the commentary was with the director and the writer, I think, and then a lot of the cast, and it was all like a bunch of kids. I think basically some of them were at the same age that I was when I was watching it, and they were just talking about the process of making a film and how exciting it was, and you know the process of like waking up in the morning and being on set and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And it just felt like so fundamentally like, I guess it was the first thing that I saw that made it seem like it was achievable, like it was something that I could do. You can actually go out and do that, and so that I found that really inspiring, I guess. But in terms of like films that are actually, I feel like a great, I don't know. I remember being blown away by The Matrix, but I'm quite young, so I think I first watched it when I was like 5 or something. Yeah. I mean, that's like an impressive feat of filmmaking, for sure. There's one called Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which I think is like an editing like masterclass. Sorry?
I've not seen that. I will have to check it out.
It's this really clever, like non-linear story as this man like gets his girlfriend's memories of his girlfriend erased from his brain, but the kind of story takes place in his brain as you're going backwards in these like memories. And it's so amazing. I mean, everything about the film is really well made, but I think the editing of it is just really exceptional.
No, fantastic. No, we really want to like thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Like we have been excited about this so long, and we just all want to let you know, everyone at CUFA, like we like absolutely love your work, and we see you. And I've already told you how much I admire you. So keep doing your thing, and I'm sure you will get to the top. So thank you so much.
Cool.
I want to thank everyone else who kind of participated and watched the event. We will be having our third behind the scenes with Dame Pippa Harris on the 2nd of September. So please tune in for that. And yeah, thank you so much, Mdhamiri.
Sure, thank you, man.
Have a great day, okay?
You too. Have a good evening.
Bye, everyone. Take care. Bye.